Now we're live. Just so you guys know, we are live and they can hear us now. So they can hear the audio. They can't see us just yet, but they can hear the audio.
I'm on the link right now. I don't see them.
Yeah, remember it's a little delayed. I think it's like 30 seconds behind or something like that.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Yeah. No, they can't see us just yet.
All right, that was me. My bad.
You sound like Julissa.
Yeah, I've been practicing. I know the kids listen more to her,
Oh, that's funny. So you guys who are watching can see us. We have 5 my chat on video. Can you guys see my chat on video? Oh no. Yes, we can. Any comments you guys make, we can see them.
On the messages, you mean?
Yeah, someone asked.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just letting them know that yes, we can. So I'm hoping everybody can hear us. So we're starting in about 5 minutes. Just FYI. I already forgot what the first topic was. I should probably look it up.
Oh.
I wonder if Jose and Suzanne are coming. Where are the topics? There you are. Okay, so I'm gonna copy and paste this on the chat because that way I don't have to come back and forth. Here. There you go. Yeah, so it's about 25 seconds behind on YouTube. So.
Were you timing it?
No, I have it on my phone and I can see it in live, so I know how behind it is. So I'm trying to make sure that they can hear us. Today we are not doing names in the hat. We will do names in the hat tomorrow. Live.
Oh, okay.
All right. 3 minutes. So the first topic, just so everyone is ready, is specifically about depression, mental health, and Christians have depression. So that's the first discussion. Yes, no, maybe so. What you guys think? Start thinking about it. Don't talk about it yet, but just start thinking about what you think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. by the way, I wanted to share. I don't know if you guys heard about this guy. I forgot his name, but he is I forgot his name, but I'm gonna look it up. He is a Christian guy who's founded an apologetics organization, but he has been diagnosed as a psychopath. He attempted to kill his father when he was
Yes.
18 years old. And he is a super interesting story to hear because God is using him now that he's a Christian because he used to be an atheist. And he was a psychopath who attempted to kill his father, went to jail, paid his dues for that. And he became a Christian there. I'll give you the name, remind me to give you the name so you guys can look into him. I was looking into him for a long time because I found his story fascinating. But yeah, so we're 20 seconds to get started. Right after those 20 seconds are up, our intro is going to go up, and then we'll get started with the first topic. So here you go. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sorry, the intro's still going on.
Go
All right. Let me fix how our faces look here so all our faces can be seen. I'm still trying to figure out all of this. I'm still not very savvy. All right. We're all here. All right. First question of the day, guys. Can Christians have depression? Yes or no? What do you guys think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else?
That's like asking if Christians can have a broken leg.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I agree. It's like saying that they don't have emotions or something, but
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I do think that they can have
I say
depression.
yeah. Rich people get depressed too.
Yeah. Well, how I guess let's talk a little bit about the myths behind Christians and depression. We hear a lot that Christians can be depressed, especially in the charismatic denominations, because somehow we are, I don't know, mutants. So it's like this, there's like all these notions about Christians and mental health, right? We can't have anxiety, we can't have depression, we can't have any number of, we can't be bipolar, or we can't have any of these mental illnesses, almost as if they don't realize that they're equating it to like, we also can't have any illnesses, period. And some people do believe that. Some people that believe that a Christian who is actually a Christian should not be suffering any illnesses. So let's talk a little bit about that. What do we think? Do you guys think that there are examples in the Bible of depression? Do any come to mind? Talk to me.
I don't think any will come to mind.
Well, I would say that the one that would come closest to that is Hope, and possibly David as well. But I would say Hope more than. At least that's the one that stands out to me more
Right.
because, I mean, throughout the entire book of Job, I mean, you see how he describes his suffering or how sad he is or his actions behind his lament, So I think that would be the primary example to lay out there. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the example that
Comes to mind for you?
that is the most visible. Yeah. And David as well. I mean, throughout Psalms, you could see different times also that he mentions. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as Hope, but I mean, I think if anyone would be Hope, they would probably be depressed as well. I know I would.
I was going to say that.
I would.
I was gonna
You know,
say
I would
that.
want to be like, just take me now, you know. So I think anyone in that state would find themselves in depression.
Yeah, I agree. When I read everything that happened to Job, and it's not like one thing happened and then 10 years went by and then something else happened to him and then another 10 years. No, it like all happened to him in one shot. Like everything, like his whole world just came crashing down. And to me, it's like if that guy, how could like if like honest questions come to my mind, like how did he survive that without trying to like throw himself off a bridge or something? um so yeah, that's definitely, I actually, that was not what came to mind for me. The person who came to mind for me was Elijah, when he went into the cave and he was like, I'm staying right here, nobody's taking me out, like I'm not going out. And got into this depression mode where he was so scared of being killed. And he was just like, I'm not leaving, I'm staying right here. Like he got into this like I'm gonna die here mode and nobody's gonna take me out. um so I think we can definitely find examples in the Bible about depression. But
I think
go ahead, Jackie.
I think mental health is as well, because I think it was Jeremiah who was a young leader of the church, and he actually talked about his anxiety, maybe not anxiety per se, but he talked about how he was like the people didn't listen to him because he was young. So I can only imagine that anxiety as well, because he has to talk to people who are way over his head in age and probably experience. So it, mental health would be anxiety as well.
Yeah, anxiety for sure. And one of the things that's a good point, because Jeremiah was an introvert. So if for people who are introvert, speaking in public is a very, very difficult thing to do. Like it doesn't come natural for like extroverts, who can just speak in front of people without a problem. So Jeremiah being an introvert, and then on top of that, okay, he was an introvert, he was very sentimental. On top of that, he was talking to people that didn't want to listen to him. That's even worse. And then on top of that, um, he was hated. It's not like, like you have those teachers that you're like, they're boring, you don't want to listen to them. But it's not that they just didn't thought he was boring and they didn't want to listen to him. They're like, they hated him for what he was telling them. So I can only imagine his position, because as an extrovert, that stuff would bother me, even though it's easy for me to speak in public. But for an introvert, that's going to affect them much more than it would an extrovert. And social anxiety is a real thing, guys. Like, especially for teenagers now. I know so many kids in my school who have social anxiety. They're constantly concerned with what others are thinking about them. What are they seeing? All the flaws they have, etc. And I can't I can't I can't imagine being that person who's always concerned with what others are thinking about them. What if they don't like what I'm wearing? What if they see a booger in my nose? Like all these things, like, yeah, okay, they're embarrassing, but it's not the end of the world. But for these people who have social anxiety, it is. It's a very real thing. Mental health is very real. And I think that we have to think about mental health as physical health. Anything that can affect a non-Christian physically can affect a Christian physically. In the same sense, anything that can affect a non-Christian mentally can affect, a Christian mentally. So we need to remember that we should never put that barrier of, I'm a Christian, I'm a daughter of the Lord, of the High King or whatever, and suddenly I'm immune to mental health issues and physical health issues. It doesn't work that way. There's nothing biblical to back that up. I think the closest thing that people try to misuse, is the Bible verse about that says that um, Jesus took all our um, sicknesses on the cross, and people try to say, "See, we can't be sick. See, we can't," and then that's not what that's referring to. But people will, because we are very famous for taking verses out of context, will take that verse and say that that's what it's meaning, when in reality that's not at all what it's saying.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead.
Plus, I
Sorry,
think
can I elaborate on something real fast? With that also, I think that because not only us, but a lot of different other denominations may misinterpret just promises in general. So they're like, well, the Bible says that I'm victorious or this and that. So it's like they're kind of setting a standard for people that aren't believers, that we are supposed to live this life that is just victorious and happy, and that, nothing bad's going to happen to us. So when they do see that someone that's Christian or someone that follows Christ does fall into a depression state, they're like, okay, well, what's going on? So I think that it's not only it's not only what the outside sees, but it's also how the Christians portray certain things. And unfortunately, it's it takes us a wrong route. So.
Yeah, and it doesn't do anything. Like, you're not gonna somehow get more people. People will get saved, but not for the right reasons. They'll come because, oh, I don't want to have anxiety anymore. I don't want to have depression anymore. Instead of because Jesus saved them and Jesus, it will redeem them and be their Lord and Savior. So we're not doing anybody any favors when we do that. Really, we're really not. So I think we should really consider just being real. And I know it can be a little embarrassing to admit to mental health issues for people in general, Christians or non-Christians. But I think that people appreciate transparency. When you're like, yeah, you know what? I struggle with this too. I struggle with this sin too. I struggle with this mental health issue too. I struggle with this illness as well. Like, these things happen to us as Christians. That's not the point. But the point isn't that we're not going to suffer from those things. On the contrary, those things make us stronger and make us trust Jesus more. But yeah, that was a good point. Jaffe, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think within our culture, and I think it doesn't help that we're Pentecostal as well. That everything is spiritual, or the fact that in our culture as Hispanics, out of sight, out of mind. So we believe in everything that's physical, but when it comes into something that we don't see, it automatically becomes spiritual. And that's a problem because again, physical health is just as much as important as your mental health. But I think we give the devil a little too much credit. You know what I mean? Like, not everything is him. We have problems within ourselves. I mean, we're full of sin, so obviously we would have errors within our own. And with our mental capacity, I mean, first of all, within our culture, talking about your emotions is not exactly popular, especially not within men. And if we were to make it more of a priority, just like other cultures do, I think we would be less inclined to make it a spiritual thing or demonic thing. It would be more of a fact of many things we don't deal with them outside, so they stay within, and it just creates problems.
I think it'd be important to make a differentiate between spiritual and demonic, because I do think that depression and anxiety and all these other things can a lot of times are a spiritual problem, and I don't mean a demonic problem when I say that. So it's a spiritual problem where the soul is broken, the spirit is broken, and we're flawed, and we need Jesus, right? But I think that what Rafi was trying to say was inclined more to the demonic side. Like, we make everything about demons. Everything is demonic. Everything is accredited to demons when it comes to mental health in a lot of charismatic denominations. So say you have anxiety, it's attributed it to a demon. If you have depression, it's attributed it to a demon. And these are not biblical things. Nothing in the Bible you're going to find. When Elijah was depressed in that cave, or when Job was struggling with his life because of everything that happened to him, there's nothing that attributed his state of mind to a demon. On the contrary, it's something God allowed, and look how much stronger it made him to trust Jesus. It can God can use these things to build our character as Christians. So I really like that you brought that up, because I had completely forgotten about that, and I'm going to get away a little bit of the Pentecostal, even though you're right, Pentecostals can do that too, but I think it's a lot of the charismatic denominations. You even have Catholics who fall in the charismatic um, branch that do these things. Everything that is of the state of mind and mental health, everything has to be demonized. So
Yeah.
it's
I
attributed
think
to a demon.
like if you take that part of it, but then you look at the other hand of it, you know, we're looking at the demon side, but we're also looking at the part where we're making it spiritual, or I guess you call it angelic, where the only solution of that is God healing you. Like there's absolutely no other way to deal with that kind of issue, which I think it's the best way would be God, of course. That's the starting point. But talking to people will help in many of the mental situations.
And that's what counseling is for too. And a lot of people in the Bible had counselors, right? That's something we don't talk about too. Counseling and therapy is attributed to something so taboo in our culture, not just like our religion, but also in our culture. But I think that it's very important to say that I think Christian counseling is very important. Jose, do you want to say something? You're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. I did want to say something because this is something, I mean, I kind of jumped in a little bit late. I'm kind of like hearing in on what's going on. And this is something that I kind of like talk with Susanna a lot, because I don't know if a lot of you guys know my background. I do come from a broken home and things like that. So a lot of this stuff does affect me mentally. But one thing you got to keep in mind, Hispanic cultures, men don't cry. So men are like, we don't talk about our feelings type deal. That's number one. Secondly, you're absolutely right. A lot of this stuff, when it comes to anxiety, depression, self-control, things that are physically meant to you, we do blame on the devil. But then there's also that balance that you have to keep in mind, because you have this balance of, one, yes, a sin is attributed that we are natural sinners and we are the cause of all of our problems. But then so as human beings, like, okay, you know, in your mind, the devil didn't make you do it. You did it on your own because, you know, you're a sinner. You did this stuff on your own. So now you want to get out of it on your own. You want to turn the page and get out of it on your own. And you want to do this stuff on your own. Not knowing how you just mentioned that you need a therapist, psychologist, and everybody else to help you out with the mental issues you already have in your head. So you turn to Jesus because, again, men don't talk about their feelings and men don't express themselves and men don't do nothing because we're Hispanic and we're macho and we're this and this and that. So I lean a lot on my wife for her counsel, her therapy, her comfort, because behind closed doors, us men, we break down to our wives. You know, we bear in and get that hug and just let it all out, because my wife will sit there and I'm gonna be strong. You know, I'm gonna stay quiet. I'm just gonna be in my little corner and just be like, okay. And she'll just walk up to me and give me a hug. She goes, baby, I know it hurts you. I know what's going on. I know your family this way. And she'll just hug me. And right there and then but, you know, it's one of those situations where, you know, you have to be careful of where you're at. You are a sinner. You have these mental issues. You have these problems. To seek help and counsel, to not try to sit there and do it so much on your own, but lean towards Bible. Because like I've mentioned to you before, Jaleesa, like, honestly, if it wasn't for God, you know, I would have gone south real quick. And the only thing that keeps me sane is God.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that a lot, because I think that for women, we don't realize, and you know, that was great. Like that really opened up so much for me, because for me as a wife, I'm not the sweet, you know, cuddly kind of person.
Yeah, Susanna's evil too.
Okay, you do realize I'm in the chat.
Hey, there you are.
And we live in the same house.
She's just reminding you, Jose. You guys live in the same house. So, but yeah,
I get it.
I appreciate you really sharing that, because that's something I don't think about very often. Like, because I kind of bury my feelings and I'm like, whatever. Everything's like kind of whatever for me. I tend to forget that, and I think that I appreciate that a lot as a woman to have shared that. So, and the men who weren't willing to share, I appreciate it too.
Yeah, no, I congratulate you for that one, because I grew up in a home where, of course, you don't cry. Like, you don't share your emotions. You're not supposed to be scared.
I grew up
like,
in that
I was whooped for being scared. You know, it wasn't like, why are you scared? So like, it's hard. Yeah, like I definitely when it comes to marriage, I've been married far less years than you have, but it definitely that definitely is something that most marriages would probably aim for, because it's tough for men to open up. and I mean women as well, not just men, but it's difficult. I mean, for men, it's not a door you can easily open. It's usually
Yeah,
locked in 10 bolts, and getting out there is it's
yeah,
not easy. And also, like, making it something that is not popular but normal is extremely hard, because for us it's extremely weird for us to be able to talk about emotions, and it's not normal. Like, the man is the pillar, the man is the strength. Like, you should never have any weaknesses. That's
I agree.
most men's vision. But you are weak and you do fail.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're not.
and that's the other thing. We try to raise our own kids in that same mindset,
Yeah.
and that's yeah, it's good for the boys. You toughen them up, you build them up, and it builds character to make them men. But you also got to remember, man, it's like even like Susanna, man. That's why I adore my wife for what she does and what she has to put up with, really, because. And truth be told, like, I have mood swings. It's like sometimes I think I'm bipolar or schizo because I'll wake up like pissed off, or I'll wake up happy, or I'll come home angry, and she's like, check yourself, leave that at the door, don't come in here with that, or if not, she'll console me, give me a nice hot plate, and I'm good. But it's it's one of those things that it's like,
Snickers.
my wife is another one where she's tough, she's strong, she don't cry for nothing, you know what I mean? But like, it does take that type of character, for one, to put up with a guy like us, where we don't talk about our feelings, we don't express ourselves well, and when we do, to tolerate where he's at. It's like, you'll get over it, and walk away, or let me go give this guy a hug because he might do something crazy.
Yeah.
That's one thing I do appreciate.
That was a really great conversation, guys. We're gonna have to move on to the next topic. But thank you so much for sharing. I really got a lot from that, even hearing you guys talk. So the second topic is authority. So respecting authority and what the Bible says about it. So let's talk about that a little bit. And I will say that people in this area tend to have their very strong opinions, and including myself, until I went to the Bible and I started reading about it, and I was like, oh crap. I was like, I got a lot about this. And this was a long time ago when I started realizing, I would like had issues with, um, I mean, I think that a lot of us do, but for those of us who were raised in like very strong-minded homes, like I do what I get to do what I want. Nobody's going to tell me what to do kind of attitude. Um, and sometimes at least you have one who's like, can, put their head down and humble and be like, all right, and give way. But we grew up, I don't know if Rafi's here, we grew up in a home where nobody gave way. Like, no, it was what I want, what I want, what I want. There was fights all the time because of that. So it was hard for me to realize how wrong I was about this. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what do you guys think? What does the Bible say about authority and respecting authority? Like, what opinions do we have in this ask? Anybody want to start? Go ahead with it.
Well, the one thing I try to, even raising my boys, I try to instill that the Bible is highly, strongly emphasized on law and order. That's number one. So I tried to sit there and explain to them that these are the mandates, these are the methods, these are the, basically rules and regulations that you got to abide by in order to do right by God. The problem is I'm not the greatest example myself, because I never had a strong household with a good authority figure there, and with anything. So I kind of go against authority, especially when you were raised back in the 90s, where it's all like police, whatever. But it's like how do you say, when you try to turn a leaf to do what's right by, oh man, it's hard to put it in words. Like when you have fear of God, that really changes a lot of things on where your mindset says, like, you got to calm down. You have to do this. You got to check your attitude. You got to check yourself. You really have to stand out as a third person to look, be like, did I really just do that? Sometimes when you lose it, sometimes when you just lose your temper, like I'm quick to lose my temper, like very quick to lose my temper. And that's where I kind of reflect a lot, and I'm just like, wow, I shouldn't have done this. I should have done that. Maybe it was a little hard. Maybe it was a little this, but at the same time, I still think it's for the best, because when it comes to raising my boys, for one, it builds character. Two, it definitely turns a whole new leaf, because it wakens you up a little bit on their attitude, on their aspect, at least for the boys, because I try my hardest, because Susanna knows I'm all about discipline and respect, that it like, I really am strong and hard on them about that. But at the same time, I try to show them enough love, enough care, where it doesn't go both ways. I give them the hugs. I explain to them this is why.
There's a balance.
Yeah, there's a balance between the two, but I don't know. As far as like, discipline and respect, I think it has to do with a lot of self-reflection and self-control, listening to what the Bible says about the law and order and the mandates of what you have to do. So by just abiding by those mandates, you should be good.
Yeah, I'm gonna add to that, and I'm gonna be a little transparent here myself. I now, in hindsight, looking back, I realize how many mistakes I made, not respecting authority in church. I never had an issue respecting my teachers at school. Um, I was scared to death what my mom would have ever done if any teacher called home to say
Right.
that I
So
did
you're
anything. And I was like agreeing. I'm like, yeah, we have the same mom. So, like, it's just, I was scared to death that I was scared of my mom more than I was of the police. Let's just say that. Okay. So, anything that would ever show disrespect to like teachers or anybody, my mom would never have put up with it. But then I grew up and I became an adult, and mommy couldn't tell me what to do anymore. Um, and I didn't go to school anymore. Like I didn't have teachers. So the only place where, I had authority over me, of course, would be church. Um, and back when I used to sing, whenever I was told that I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing, I always had a snarky attitude. And I realize that now, of course, now it's too late. But I'm always like, when I realized how bad it was, I realized, man, and I tell God, I'm like, how do you put up with me? Like, how do you why would you care to change someone like me who had that kind of attitude? Um, and I think it shows a lot of God's mercy, because now that I realize how much authority has to be respected through how the Bible teaches authority. I mean, I was reading the other day how God, when Hagar tried to leave um Abraham and his wife because she didn't want to be treated the way they were treating her, God told her to go back. Like he said, go back. Um, I mean, I was like, wow, like that's how much like God was the one to tell her, like she had already left, but God literally made an appearance just to tell her to go back. And this is the thing with in Timothy, we find how God tells a slave also that he should be obedient to his I forgot what they to his lord, what they call it, to the person that he lived with. He had to be obedient to that person. And obviously as Christians, there's certain expectation. If somebody doesn't treat us well at work, what do? We leave, right? We just leave. I don't like how you treat me, I'm just gonna leave. And I sometimes wonder if God's expectation of us is, as long as they're not making you do anything against the Bible, you're supposed to be respecting that figure, that authority. And it's, for me, that's hard to swallow. That's a very hard, thing to swallow. But God's expectation expectation of us, there's the world standards, and then there's God's standards of us as Christians, and how are we supposed to witness to others? And I'm not even gonna say that I would be willing to stay at a job where people where I don't like people. I'm not even going to try to say that I would do something like that. But I do want to say that I think God's expectation of us, sometimes we don't realize how much God expects of us when it comes to respecting authority, not just in church, but I mean, obviously also in church, but outside, our bosses, our supervisors, for those of you in school, our teachers. There's a huge, the Bible has a lot to say about authority and respecting authority. And it has a lot to say about when you don't like the rules too. That as long as they're not making you, um, what's it called, break a biblical law, we're supposed to be obedient. We're supposed to follow them. As long as they're not making you do anything that's against the Bible, we are supposed as Christians to follow the rules. And that's huge. I mean, because think about it. This changes the way that um, we naturally are inclined to do, which is to defy authority. Um, and it creates a lot of humbleness that I know, I'm sure 100% I need a lot of. Um, but it's hard, I think. I don't know. Anybody want to share like any experiences or like something they found in their life that it was hard to do when it comes to respecting authority?
So like the yesterday I was talking to to my friend David, who I talked to quite a bit, and we were talking about this exact thing actually, just specifically because we were talking about the deconstruct of the family, which is where you learn your first respect and authority, and it falls down to like, okay, your parents are your authority, okay, but why, right? So like, how do you get respect? How do you get authority? Uh, and I started analyzing myself, and it was honestly, it came down to knowledge. When I was a kid, you scared because they're your parents, right? But when you get older, knowledge becomes almost like power, right? So when I would look at my parents, I'd be like, well, my parents are ignorant in some things. And like, since I know more than them, you start losing a little bit of authority or at least respect to that authority. And I found that when it comes to the Bible, is the only place where like you don't have to have a reason. It's just the way that it's structured, right? And it's a huge issue because now you need information. It's the palm of your hands. So unless you put an authoritative structure above just I'm your dad, you do what I say, it doesn't work. It will eventually break, right? Not that it doesn't have its place, because if fathers were around more, or if they show their strength and their structure and they're the pillar of the homes, they earn respect and they earn authority. But beyond that, when you get to your teenage years, when you get to your adult years, that authority and respect stays. At least for me, it was because it was, when I was little, when I needed information, I didn't have a computer. I would ask my parents, why is the sky blue? They would tell me maybe a lie, but they knew everything for me, But as you get older, you learn that maybe your parents don't know everything, right? So I had to attach myself to something else because I was like, my parents don't know everything. And it was that God has put a structure, right? And me, that I'm a dad now and a husband, you're like, okay, now I have to focus a little more. I have to be able to, keep up with my kids' knowledge. I have to keep up with, making sure. But if you integrate God's laws within your family, you don't always have to be on top of that stuff. It's just that authority is going to be there because their fear of God then translates to their fear of making sure that they follow these rules, So it's like, for me specifically, because my father figure wasn't there until I was around 16. When it came to my mom, I was extremely scared of her, but it like breaks down your sight of how authority works, how respect works. So I had to grasp onto something else because obviously that wasn't going to work. So
Yeah, I like that you said that. Because I can share that. I think that when you become fearful of the Lord, you realize I don't need a reason to respect my parents. I don't need a reason to be obedient to them and honor them. God expects that of me, and therefore I will do it. Um, Even when I don't like it, even when I think they're wrong, even when I disagree with them. And that takes a lot of self-control. It takes a lot of love for the Lord. But I think that now that we're almost all of us parents, Sammy and Jenny don't have kids, and Randall doesn't have kids. But I think that now that most of us have kids, we appreciate that idea, right? That God has placed that you don't need a reason to obey and honor your parents. You should do it because God expects that of you. Um, and I want to
And I
ask
mean,
the kids who
especially
are listening, like, what do you guys struggle? What authorities do you guys struggle with obeying? And I just like to see what you have to say. Does anyone else want to share
Um,
before? Go ahead,
I
Randall.
got one. There was a old saying they used to use. I think my parents used to use it too. Like, you may not love me, but you are gonna respect me. That was hard. That was very hard. Because, like Ralphie said, like you always felt like you was right, and you see them making so much mistakes. But my parents, one thing my parents taught me to at least look at the positive, because at that time it wasn't working. I have a roof on my head. They haven't kicked me out yet. And I look at that too everywhere I go, even when I go to work, because I used to have bosses younger than me, you know, and I used to be a boss telling older people what to do, and those older people get snappy,
Hmm.
and to gain that love to a person, that is very hard, even if you don't know them. But I always say, like the arm, I know my ranking. I try to respect who higher than me and try to love them too, because the love part is the hardest part.
Don't I know it? It's so true. Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I have a comment. So I think we should, just reiterate that the Bible does tell us that we are supposed to subject or to be submissive to rulers, to authorities, or to be obedient. And I think that we should all realize that that is what godly living is. To be submissive, to be obedient to authorities, so that through us, non-believers can see our obedience to God. Because imagine if we're not being obedient to authorities, how are we going to be obedient to God? How is it that we're not going to represent Christ in something so simple, yet we're saying we're Christian, So us being obedient or being respecting our authority is a way to also show non-believers that we are Christian. And in that way, we're portraying Christ in everything that we do. So we should always have that in mind, that our obedience or our respect towards our authority is going to portray Christ, so we should just always respect our authorities.
That's an excellent point. I had forgotten about that passage where it says, through this, people will know that you are my follower, and that's huge. You could almost say like that's part of the fruits that people will see in you that should be different from non-Christians. And I guess to go even further, that passage doesn't say obey authorities only when you like the laws, only when you like the rules, right? It says obey them, period. And we know obviously from logic that unless those laws are going to contradict something that the Lord has already said to do, there is no reason not to obey them. We don't have a reason not to obey them. Um, and I think that John MacArthur had an interview with Ben Shapiro once. You guys probably want to listen to it because he talks a little bit about his take on revolution, and what he thinks, how he thinks he should have been handled. And it was really good insight to listen to. So if you guys ever have a chance, listen to that interview. Ben Shapiro, was it John MacArthur? Yeah, it was John MacArthur that he interviewed, I believe. If not, then maybe it was somebody else. But I'm pretty sure it was John MacArthur that he interviewed, and he asked him about revolution and all of this stuff, and John MacArthur's response about it was quite, I was surprised because I had never heard that response, but it made a lot of sense. And it talks about that, about respecting authority, and what his take on that was. All right, so it's 7:23, so we're going to move on to the next topic from here. And the next topic is topic number 3 is self-control. So here we're going to just generally talk about self-control. We're going to talk about how we should manage our time, how we need self-control to manage our time, especially when it comes to like social media and video games, and how important self-control is when it comes to managing our anger. So, I guess we can just dedicate a small amount of time to the whole social media video games business, and then we'll move on to anger. So this will be a good topic because I think we have a good range here of people where they can talk about like how do you ever find yourself struggling with like maybe not video games but like social media, and what do you do to manage that? What do you do to control yourself, to develop some self-control when it comes to that? So just in general, open to whoever wants to talk.
Uh, well, with social media, um, I could say I'm guilty for getting lost in my phone sometimes as well. But I generally, when it comes to like, I guess you would say family time, me and Susanna, I try to really emphasize like, hey, let's put our phones away. Let's just go spend the family time, and that's it. So I think if we just say it out loud, especially this day and age with teenagers and stuff like that, I think if we just say it out loud in the households, like, hey, we're gonna spend family time. So right now, no devices, no Xbox, no cell phones, no nothing. Cut it off, and it's just strictly family times. That's one important thing. Secondly, I think family dinners, table time. When you have your family dinners, I think that's very important to really have set as the family. Nobody eats individually. Nobody eats aside. Everyone's at the table. Everyone's off the devices, and everybody sits there. You know, but I am. Susanna won't catch me lying. I am guilty of sometimes getting lost in my phone and getting, say, okay, it's getting kind of boring, so I'll just do this.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll do that, but like I think if we just said out loud, sometimes I'll leave my I'll leave my phone upstairs in the bedroom, and I'll go downstairs in the living room and spend family time. I think those are the one of the things we need to make more time of to do with family. But if you're like, just constantly on social media everywhere you go, then I think you have a problem. Because if you can't get off your phone while you're driving or at work, then that's an issue. That's something you need to, that's a whole different topic you need to work on yourself. Because at this point, you're just addicted. What I'm saying? It's an addiction. But, managing your time, I think that's one thing that me and Susanna, we kind of do quite well
That's
at that.
good. I think modeling is very important to our kids. Um, and I will say that now that I have kids, I'm much more mindful about how often I'm around my phone because we don't let our kids use devices. So
Mhm.
on that same note, I want to teach my kids you don't need devices. Okay, you don't need them. So, but I can't do that if I'm on my phone all the time, right? So
Right.
I'm trying to model to my kids that even if we're out and other people are on their phones all in one place and they're supposed to be hanging out and spending time together and everybody's on their phone, I'm trying to develop where I still won't take out my phone and I will go to my kids and talk to them and whatever, to kind of model to them, look, that's not how it's supposed to be. Okay, yeah, everybody else is doing it. And it sadly sometimes it is the adults too. And you'll be like, I don't say it verbally. I don't say, look, all these adults that are what they're doing. And I don't say that. I just want to model it to them. I want to
I'm kind of guilty of that. I kind of like me and Susanna.
um
Me and Susanna will be like at a restaurant or something like that, and we'll look over at a parent and a kid who are supposed to be spending time together, but they're both on their phones, and be like, "Man, look at that! Look at that! What they're doing, man! You think that's cool? That's not cool, man. That's not."
yeah. So I think that if you realize you lack that the thing being around is going to be an issue, just leave it in your room, charge it, leave it charging, or do whatever you have to do. But I think that being mindful of that self-control to manage your time is super important, and modeling it to our kids is important. And as teenagers, with school, homework, all this other thing, I think it's also very important to develop that little control that you can have now. So that it develops healthy habits, not just for your phone, because when you get older, as you grow, if as you grow and your love for the Lord grows, you're going to want to spend more time praying, reading the Bible, with connecting with family, etc. All these very, very important things that you want to spend time on, not just on social media. When I see some of the stuff that people post on social media when it comes to like talking about things, and I'm just like why is this being said on public? Like why? You're just like I what I do is I unfollow them. Like I don't want to see their stuff on my timeline. Like I don't just want to see it. Just you know. But I think that at some point, if we would have had social media, we would have been there too because of the lack of maturity. And I think that because we're older, we realize, man, I mean, I can tell you for sure I was guilty of some of those things, and now I'm like, why? And now you realize because you grow in the Lord and God has that, like, you know, gives you that maturity as you learn the Bible more, and you want to pass it on to your kids so they don't end up making those same embarrassing mistakes. Um, Self-control and time management is super important for that, I think.
We're also adults. Like, we have reasons to, because we're models, we're examples. We have invested a lot into our family, so we have that. But as a teenager, you don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be entertained, and it's boring not to be.
Yeah.
Right? There is no boredom, that almost is non-existent. Actually, my nephew was here like yesterday or the day before, and he was like, the only time I think or I have thoughts is right before I go to sleep. I was like, you don't know how to be bored then.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, because like our teens listening, they're like, yeah, this is cool and all, but they're not adults. Like, they're not thinking about this kind of stuff. They're not like, oh yeah, I should be good examples for my kids. Like, I wasn't thinking about any of that. And the problem is that there is not going to be anything to make you prone to wanting to get off video games or wanting to get off social media, other than your parents disciplining you and saying, well, now you have to go outside. And I think that's one of the things where teenagers have to start getting an adult mindset where nothing's going to push you to do it. You have to push yourself. And it's not about you having fun while doing it, or it's about learning that self-control is going to benefit you later on. Not just that, but it's part of growing up, having to say no to pleasures of the world or anything that entertains you, just because there are better things to do. And unfortunately, it's kind of hard to get that through their heads, because their minds are not moving at the same speed as ours. Like, I've heard teens talk. They talk like they're machine guns. Like, it's super quick. It goes from one topic to the next.
It goes
like
everywhere.
It's so crazy. But it's like, guys, like, stop, calm down. Have you thought about what you did today? Have you thought about you could have done something better? How could you, and I think it's hard. But for the teens listening that maybe don't have parents who unfortunately don't put enough interest in you, do the initiative. It's a great thing to have that type of connection with your parents. Like, just stop and be like, hey, dad, mom, can I talk to you for 2 minutes? Like, can you get off your phone? Like, and the kids will react. I'm telling you, because if my kid said that, I'd be like, wow, I'm failing something today, Like, do that. Go to your dad, go to your mom. Hey, can I talk to you? Like, can you turn off the TV? Can we have dinner together? If you don't have, I know that my family fails in that. We don't have dinner all the time together. A lot of times we want to be in front of a TV, which is an American natural thing to do. But teens, like, if you want that kind of relationship, or if you're feeling like your life is going by and you never pause, you should do something about it, because it really is like, we are not made to be only online creatures. We were made to be social creatures. And those relationships will benefit you in the future, whether it be your parents, your family, your sister, your brother, or even friends. If that's all you got, build those relationships by getting off your phone, because you don't build them that way, or anything. And
Texting doesn't count.
Yeah. If you're with a group of people and you're texting someone who's not there, you have a problem. Like,
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. And yeah, teens, you need to take ownership of your own decisions, because you're 13 now, 12 now, 14 now. If you think about it, even if you're just 11, that's only 7 years away from being a legal adult in this country. And if you don't create good habits, you're going to be a very sad citizen of this country. Um, you want to create good habits. Again, not just because social media creates more depression and anxiety than any other source, not just because of that, but because these habits will benefit you spiritually. Developing that self-control will help you in your spiritual life, in your walk with the Lord. And if you care enough about that, start building those things now. If your parents are not good examples, if your parents are also always on the phone, if your parents are not on top of you about how much you're on the phone, make it yourself. Do something yourself. And I believe you guys can do this. I think that parents and society don't give teenagers enough credit about how much they can actually do. And because we don't give them enough credit, the expectation and the standard that we have of them is like the bar is like this low, when really you guys are capable of so much more. And I've again and again, as the years have gone by, and I've been working with you guys as teens for a long time, I've always had a few who surpass my expectations when I'm like, wow, that's crazy that this is just a teenager and is doing this or blank or that. Um, so anybody else want to share before we move on to the very last thing, which is anger?
Yeah, I was gonna say something, Julissa. I definitely think there should be a well balanced amount of when you use the devices, and I think for the teenagers, if you're getting up and as soon as you get up, you're looking at the phone for social media, like taking a selfie or whatever you decide to do, then that's something you want to check yourself with, because obviously you're addicted. You're addicted to what comments, who said what about me, and that's not the way to live, because then it just becomes you become addicted to it, and slowly it becomes more of a force of habit to just keep checking the phone. And I will say that as you get older, you do have to be careful what you put online on social media, because there's times that employers will go and look at your social media and see the kind of stuff you put, and sometimes that could even prevent you from getting a job because of that. So I think it's just to be mindful. I don't think you should argue or maybe vent in social media, because it's not going to get nowhere. It's just probably going to make you feel good typing it away, typing the keyboard all hard, but it gets nowhere. You just cause fire for nothing and get yourself worked up. So I think it's be mindful of what you put online and what you're looking at, because like I always tell my kids, I may not be seen or find out what you're doing, but God is always looking at what you're doing. So just definitely have a good balance of what you do online, regardless if your parents don't know what you're doing. Some parents, we scan the phones, but some parents don't. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, our Spanish culture, they kind of limit themselves with being, savvy with the phones or whatnot, and just kind of let things go. But you know what you're doing. You're at that age where you know right from wrong. So just definitely always check yourself.
Yeah.
for sure. And Liz said set boundaries. Yeah, and I mean you're a parent. That's your job, you know. And as a parent, I think one of the expectations as a parent is you're supposed to set boundaries for your kid for everything. And some parents do it for everything except for their phones, for the kids' phones, and I'm like, how does that make any sense? Makes no sense.
I mean, on the other side though, like you said, I think we put a level for teens too low.
Yeah,
They can do it themselves. Like my it's spoiling teens, because like I was telling you about my nephew. He's an extremely smart kid, and I feel like he would have these amazing ideas, right? If it wasn't entertained all the time, where your brain is being entertained, so it's not doing its own entertainment. Like most people have the greatest ideas because they were just bored and thinking, right? And it's hard because it's normal. Like I was growing up in an era where video games were starting. Well, Jose did, but I was more the cooler games, you know. But it was like I was already having that issue when I didn't have a laptop at home. We had one desktop at home and it was absolutely terrible. But you were already getting entertained all the time, right? And it's hard to like expect it of the teens because I mean I was at fault of it just as much. If I could have had video games and phone all the time, it would have worked. But my parents didn't buy me a phone until I was way older, but it didn't even exist to be cool anyways. But like I think that teens can definitely set their own boundaries if they see the benefit of it. The problem is that they don't see any benefit of it, so they're not going to do it. But it's beneficial for you because, first of all, you're practicing self-discipline and will, and that's like a muscle. The more you train it, the more it works. But you will find more about yourself while you self-analyze than any other time, because you guys are in the place where you're becoming adults, you're analyzing yourself, you're getting to know yourselves. And sometimes it's good to analyze yourself because you'll find your faults, you'll find your good and maybe focus on them. And those are things that many teens just don't care about because they're too busy. Like she said, what do people think about me? What are the comments about me? How many likes did I get? And that's just a disservice to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Love it. All right, let's move on to anger. We have like 5 minutes to discuss self-control and anger. So share, people, self-control and anger. What do you guys think? What are some opinions that we have about this?
So this is one thing I kind of still to myself I struggle with, and I'm 37 years old. Aside from Lucette, I think I'm the older. Me and Susanna are probably the older ones here, but I still learn till this day because for one, you gotta keep in mind. Anything that has to do that's tied with emotion is reactive and it's impulsive. So knowing that if something makes you sad, you cry. If something makes you happy, you smile. If something pisses you off, you snap. And like I said before, I have a quick and easy temper where I lose it very easy, especially at my job. And I, again, like I said, I'm working on it and I'm learning from it. What I can say, and that has helped me out along my anger journey, is taking a step back and breathing. Taking a step back, get yourself out of that situation. Walk away as much as you can, even with anybody tells you anything. Anybody, if they make fun of you for walking away, hey, you're a bigger man for it, or anything situation. Because sometimes what I've also learned in my job that me walking away, trying to cool down and cool off, I've came back and the person who got me upset actually apologized to me. So, things like that, it could have gone south had I just reacted, and we go at it. But me getting up out of my chair and just walking away, going down the hall, taking a couple breathers, just letting it out, when you do this, you do one of these, you just you come back and they apologize, and that actually changed the whole dynamic of the situation, which is actually pretty great. So my advice on that, because again, I'm still learning, will just be up to get yourself out of the situation before it escalates to something else.
The hard part is, I think as a teenager, is the fact that you have something to prove. I think when I was in high school, you had to show that you were tough. So when you were angry, you got in his face, they got in your face, and you have something to prove. And as a teenager, your concept of emotion control is extremely slim, especially if you haven't been taught. And not just that, that's the extreme of the physical part of it, but the mental part of it, I see that there's a lot of anger, and they do self-anger where they're mad at themselves, even though it's not actually 100% their fault. And that will lead into depression. That will lead into mental anxiety or breakdowns, or even to hurt yourself. And as teens, I think that if you have problems with anger, you may not be able to deal with it on your own. You may need to seek someone who can help you, because a lot of the times you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know that there's a way to control anger, you have to ask people who may be able to help. And it's okay to be angry. That's something that I don't think people understand. It's okay to be angry. Just control your actions from it. Emotion is part of being human, and it's definitely part of being a teenager. But it's one of those things where you have to, like you said, think before you do actions, because there are consequences for these actions. Maybe not as much for you because you're a teenager and you maybe tried as a child, but there are consequences. And a lot of the times you have to step back and think of what you're about to do. And it's extremely hard because you're not thinking most of the time when you're angry.
I guess that is reactive.
And that's something that congratulations will never go away. You have another 80 years about it. Like it's gonna be something you have to tame.
Yeah, you have to
it's not
train.
gonna be 100% tameable. You know, it's step-by-step process.
It's
but
like,
definitely if you have those problems, look for help.
it's like everything else we teach you guys, like, you know, like attraction. It's completely okay to feel attracted to if you're a girl to another boy, if you're a boy to another, like that's completely normal as a teenager. The problem is what are you gonna do with that? You know, what are you gonna do with that attraction? You're gonna feed into it, start having thoughts you're not supposed to. Are you gonna act and do things you're not supposed to? So there are things that are natural for us as human beings, right? But what matters is what we do with that. What are we going to do with this thing? Are we going to give into it, those desires and feelings, or are we going to ask God to help us control it, learn how to control it, and find help if we need it? You know, so this is what matters. And the earlier you start, the better it is going to be, because it's like anything else. The longer you train yourself for running a marathon, you know, the probably the better you're going to do, right? And then the better you're going to improve at it. The longer you play soccer, the better you get at it, I hope. The longer you do any sport or do anything, the better you get at it. Okay, so the same thing with developing self-control when it comes to anger. It's a natural thing to feel anger, but the way it comes out, the way you're going to react to that anger is what matters. You know, and the Bible says you can get angry, just don't sin. Okay, and the Bible says that.
And one last thing, you know, it's just that you're a teenager. You're allowed to fail. Okay, let's get that straight. That's what parents are here for. They're going to help you through those issues where you fail. We go ahead and we try better, but that's why the topic we were just talking about, self-analyze. If you were in a situation where you failed and you got angry and you did the worst that could have happened, think about it after. Think about, what could I have done differently? What could I have done more maturely? And I know my sister had told me stories about her, and she's like, man, I shouldn't have done that stuff. And I'm man,
I got
probably
stories
would
for
have
you.
done the same thing. You know, I was like, so it's one of those things where this is part of being an adult. And this is where your transition is, where you're a teenager, but you still have these standards that you have to live up to. Growing up is part of life. And failing is part of life, but that's where your maturity comes from. Is it's okay to fail, and anger will probably, if any other emotion, will push you to fail, but analyze yourself after these failures. That's extremely important. That's part of being a Christian, because you're trying to better yourself every day.
And I know people who have gotten angry enough to go to jail, to make very bad decisions. You don't want to be that person. You know, and if you find yourself struggling with anger, find help now. Don't wait until you're an adult. Don't do that. All right. Anybody else want to add before we conclude?
You guys said everything I was going to say.
There's one thing that there's one thing I want to add that, you know, I kind of want to piggyback off of what Rafi said about when you're in a situation where you're being peer pressured about to do something, like, oh my God, what are you going to do? Someone got into your face and your friends are there and they're kind of antagonizing and instigating and stuff, the whole situation, right? You know, from the words of my lovely wife, she would tell you, those friends ain't your friends.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you graduate, you'll have one or maybe two. And then once you become an adult, you'll have a whole new set of group couples that you talk with. They won't even be your high school friends no more. That's one thing we try to teach our son. The second thing that my wife likes to throw at and says, if you find yourself in a situation where you're going to get angry, you know, how would you react if God was standing right next to you?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
What would you do in that moment if Jesus is right there next to you? You know, that's one thing you just kind of like, whew, let me catch myself, you know, before I did make a mistake. So that's one thing you guys got to want to carry yourself, because technically speaking, guys, and teenagers who are out there listening, God is right there next to you, paying attention to how you're reacting and what you're going to do. So like Rafi was saying, controlling your emotions, controlling your temper, putting yourself in a situation where, it's reactive. Definitely want to check yourself before you do anything. Think about it. I know it's hard. And believe me, like I said, I'm 37 and I'm still thinking about it. Like how do I react out of this situation when I get pissed off?
And the Bible says, right, that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of self-control, right? So that's one of the fruits that we're supposed to be showing, self-control, as we mature as Christians, as we grow in the Lord. So good points. Anybody else?
Yeah, I said everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, and if for any reason they don't know what self-control is, it's literally just not doing what you want to do. Because I mean, if someone's screaming at your face, the first reaction is someone's like, okay, I'm gonna whatever, when I get angry, whatever comes to my head is what I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to just step back, like Jose said, just step back, just move to the side, and I'll come back to that conversation later, But it's being wise, guys. It's literally being wise and just learning to, let the Holy Spirit work in you also, because what's going to happen is you're going to react, and then you're going to give the enemy an opportunity to do something else. So now you're going to have confrontation with your parent, with your friend, with your sibling. And then guess what? That problem became another problem. And now you're going to have two problems to have to deal with. And it's learning, to restrain yourself, to control the situation rather than let it control you.
Yeah. We're not saying it's easy. We're saying it's doable.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you for being with us today. I think that is the end of today. I think we had like 13 people viewing. So that's not too bad. All right. We're going to go ahead and say bye to everybody. Thank you, Liz, for being with us. Jose, your first time here. Susanna, too. Thank you for being here. It was good. This many people talking is good. Sammy did all the talking for all of us, though, so he should work on giving us the opportunity to talk.
He's controlling his anger. That's what he's doing.
And you'll hear me talking tomorrow.
Sammy's the angriest person I know.
Practicing self-control, right, Sam?
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right. God bless you guys.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.